Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
When you think about super successful businesses that are selling through the roof, like Heinz or Mattel, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But there's a secret. The business behind the business making selling simple for them and buying simple for their customers. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout as Heinz and Mattel. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to the Price of Football podcast, the pod that follows the money behind the beautiful game, although increasingly I'm discovering it's not as beautiful as I hoped it would be, Kieran. The Kieran in question, of course, is Kieran Maguire, the Prof, the Baron, the Governor, the Tyson Fury. He's got all sorts of different nicknames. The Dog's Bollocks, apparently, is one of them.
I've heard that one.
He's the Liverpool University football finance expert. Hello, Kieran.
Hello, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Day. I'm over the civilian sidekick bit now. I'm broadcaster and comedian now. It's a Monday, so it's your questions. Our pod today is based on your questions. And coming up, Charlton Athletic, the future, the real living wage, Richard Scudamore's bonus, and many more. So, first question, Kieran. We mentioned this in passing in the last pod, but this is a question from Tom Johnson. He wants your view on the Oyston demise at Blackpool, which does all seem like a dream now. The Oystons basically ran that club into the ground until one of the owners, Valery Belikov, I believe, a fellow share owner, took him to court. Tom's question basically is, and I think they're both good questions, is why did the EFL not intervene in those 5 years of disastrous mismanagement? And should financial fair play work both ways?
I think that those are really good questions. To give sort of a history for those people not familiar with the full story, Blackpool were promoted from the Championship to the Premier League in 2010. They then spent 1 season in the Premier League. And what they did was that they didn't give anybody a pay rise. They paid wages which averaged £6,000 a week in a division where the average was £38,000 a week. So the fact that they lasted as long that season, because they still had a fair chance towards the end of the season, is testament to Ian Holloway's ability to build a squad and a sense of togetherness. At the time, they were effectively under the charge of a guy called Carl Oyston, and he paid £11 million that season, in effect, to a company that was controlled by his dad. Now, his dad was also a director. Now, his dad is a guy called Owen Oyston. Some people would call flamboyant. Some people would call convicted rapist. Owen Oyston, still satisfied, of course, the EFL's and the Premier League's fit and proper person rule.
Which just beggars belief. That could only be worse if they decided he was too flamboyant, and that was the only reason they could not. It's just astonishing that man was ever allowed to. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So the club made £90 million from being in the Premier League for 1 season, and then it also had, in those days, you used to get 4 seasons worth of parachute payments. Yeah. What Blackpool did was, when they were relegated, first of all to the Championship, and secondly to League One, and eventually ended up in League Two, was they didn't spend money on players. And you mentioned the minority shareholder, Valery Belikov. Now, this was a guy who'd bought a quarter of the club in 2008, and he'd put some money into the club. It went up to the Premier League. But he wasn't allowed any involvement. He wasn't allowed to get involved in decision making. He wasn't allowed to suggest at board meetings that they invest more in players and managers and so on. He was effectively sidelined. And he made certain allegations in respect of the behaviour of the Oystons. And the club eventually had a legal ruling in favour of Mr. Bellicon. He was given £31 million in compensation for that, and it was the phrase used by the judge was that the Oyston family had illegitimately stripped the club of around about £25 million, and they'd funneled that money into other companies owned by the Oyston family. Now, is a club allowed to pay other companies? Yes, it does. It also has a legal duty to act on behalf of all shareholders. So as you can see, Mr. Bellicon was not benefiting from this money being given to other parts of the Oyston Empire, which many say were struggling because he was involved in sort of advertising, property and so on. And with the demise of printed press, we now sort of we use the internet so much. I think the view was that some of the Oyston Empire was not performing as well as it used to.
And the Oystons are now out of the club.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're in safer hands.
Yes, we've got a brand new owner, a local person who he wants. Well, he's saying all the right things. The fan base has returned because I was involved with some of the fan groups, and one of whom was called the Tangerine Knights Group, and they instigated a campaign called the Not a Penny More, and they effectively boycotted their own club. And for a fan, that's the toughest decision that you can make. Newcastle fans have become split. Some want to do the same with regards to Mike Ashley. We saw a similar approach taken by Manchester United fans as a result of the Glazer takeover. But when you've got so many years invested in a football club and your friends are still going on, so it really is. I've got nothing but for admiration for these people, and I've had meetings with some of them as well, and they said they were practically in tears. To have to walk around town on the Saturday when their hearts were still there,
of course,
and listen out for the results was really tough. But they didn't buy the merchandise, they boycotted the catering, and they even boycotted attendances. So we actually saw crazy situations, such as when I think Blackpool were hosting Arsenal in the FA Cup, and the attendance was poor, because so many fans had decided that they were going to do the ultimate sanction, which was the match was being televised. They wanted the rest of the country to see just how strongly they felt about the involvement of the Oyston family.
Interesting you mentioned the Newcastle fans there, because we played them a couple of weeks ago, and virtually the only thing they sang all the way through was about Mike Ashley.
Yes.
They didn't. It was we saying afterwards we couldn't recall any songs about Newcastle. I think it was one Steve Bruce song. The rest of it was literally an hour and a half of "You Fat Greedy Bastard, Get Out of Our Club," which is what they feel. Tom's question about FFP working both ways.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. As well as having a cap in terms of what you invest in terms of players, should you also have a collar, i.e. a minimum amount? Now, if you take a look at what happens in American sport, many of their franchise sports, the likes of the NFL, they do have a wage cap, but they also say, because there's no relegation, if you spend anything less than 85% of the wage cap, you will be fined, and that money will go to other clubs in the division to stop a club fortunately getting promoted to the Premier League. For whatever reason, ultimately it's down to the players, and you've got to give them credit, but it's to stop the club when it gets to the Premier League and when it receives that first cheque for £100 million, turning around to the squad, giving them a patronising tap on the head and saying, well done, lads, by the way, we're not going to recruit anybody, we're not going to give you a pay rise, good luck, we'll give you a win bonus now and then if you win, but we're not going to upgrade the quality of the squad, and all of the money effectively is going to be funneled back to the owners.
It's amazing, isn't it, how the most capitalist country in the world can teach us lessons about a level playing field. Jake Elsley is a Charlton fan. I can only apologise, Jake. Somebody has to be. He's after reassurance, basically. So Jake wants to know whether Du Châtelet, who's going to be another one who goes down in history as a terrible, terrible owner, does he still have any shares in the club? Did he clear the club's debt? How much did the new owners pay, and can they afford it?
Right, let's deal with those questions one by one. I went on to Company's House and started looking at small print.
You do realise there's big printing. Do you ever bother with the big print?
Certainly not. There's headlines.
There's nothing you can learn from the big print, is there?
No.
There's me spelling out the words in the big print, and you're going straight for the small print.
So, according to the small print, the new owners, who are called East Street Investments, so is that something to do with Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah, he's probably.
Yeah. Could be Bruce Springsteen fans or something.
Yeah.
I'll
I'll ask my mate Gloucester Dave. He's the Bruce Springsteen expert.
Right. It says that they own a minimum of 75%, so somewhere between 75% and 100% of the shares. So it could be that they now have full ownership of Charlton. The documentation that gets lodged at Company's House is always very much sort of based on protocol and procedure, so you never get to see exactly what you want. There will be a document which will come out later this year, and rest assured I will be getting my magnifying glass out and asking those Columbo-style questions of it.
So the protocol is that you don't reveal exactly how many shares you have?
That's right. It's called a change of control, and when one person relinquishes control of a business and another person takes over, you only have to say that you own between 50 to 75 or 75 or more. Now, that 75 or more could take us up to 100%.
Right.
I'm assuming that that's what they've done. But until I see the full paperwork, I wouldn't like to commit myself.
So the bad news for Charlton fans is that could suggest that Du Châtelet still has retained some shares, or is that unlikely?
I think it's unlikely, because if you only own a small fraction of the company, as we saw with what happened at Blackpool, you really have got very little say in what's taking place, especially if you are a private company such as Charlton. So that deals with question number one.
Can they afford it as well? Is that the next?
Can they afford it?
Because when Palace were taken over in 2010, the owners were quite plain about the fact they basically spent all their money on the club, and that we'd have to be patient for further investment, which was fine because they told us about that. So, do we know how big this company is and whether they can afford this club?
Well, a lot will depend upon the price. Now, according to the London Evening Standard, they seem to think that the owners paid around about £50 million for the club. Without going into too much detail, last summer I was approached to do a valuation of Charlton Athletic. Now, I'm quite happy to say that, because the person that asked me to do the valuation subsequently didn't bother to pay me for my advice. And I valued it at around about 25 million. So if and I was told at the time...
That was a nervous laugh, by the way, on behalf of the person who didn't pay you. I wasn't laughing at the fact you weren't paid. I was laughing at the fact that someone out there should be very scared, because I know what you're like when you're riled.
I was told at the time that Roland wouldn't accept anything below 60. So if this figure of 50 million is correct, then it would appear that he's managed to persuade people to pay something which is close to his asking price. Does that leave them with further funds to invest? If you take a look at the Charlton message boards, I think, were they excited that he's gone? Yes, because whoever takes over, they've got one thing in their favour: their first name's not Roland.
Yeah.
Is this a case of be careful what you wish for? Only time will tell. I think the new owners certainly have a business plan. Did they spend money in the January transfer window? That doesn't appear to be the case. So I think that's caused a degree of disappointment from the Charlton fan base. So I think they are towards the bottom end of the Championship, and they were hoping that to improve the quality of the squad. So that hasn't materialised. How wealthy are the new owners? We don't know. I mean, initially, I think the fans were excited because there were links to people in Abu Dhabi. So therefore, everybody's first inclination is that if it's from somebody from the Middle East, they're automatically a sheikh and they're automatically a multimillionaire. That's not the case. So there's that issue. Is de Châtelet owned any money? Again, I've looked at the small print on Companies House, and what happened in January, and I don't think this is great news, it's not bad news, is that there is a company called Star Prix NV, that's Prix with an X.
I'm still laughing.
NV, which is based in Belgium.
Of course. And
that company has have what we refer to as a charge. Now, a charge is a form of a mortgage agreement, so it looks as if some of de Châtelet's companies still have lent money to Charlton Football Club.
Okay.
In the last set of accounts, the loans from the football club to the owner, they totalled around 60 million. Now, it could be that he's written off some of that, none of that, or all of that, and has given the further loan. We don't know. We don't know whether the loan is interest-bearing, because, again, I've been through the document, and nothing grabbed me. Admittedly, I was listening to the Tyson Fury at the time I was going through
Living
the
dream, yeah.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I think from what we know of du Châtelet, he won't have written off all the debt. We need to get through quite a few questions yet, so we might have to answer these in less detail, I'm afraid,
okay,
Kieran,
sure.
which is it's to your credit that you give us the full story, but sometimes just the headlines will do.
Okay.
I know you don't like the headlines. Andrew Davidson, and I think we could probably answer this question in one word. Andrew Davidson asked should all Premier League clubs be signing up to paying staff the real living wage?
Yes.
Yes, essentially. Are they doing so?
No. My understanding, presently, Liverpool, Everton, Chelsea, West Ham, Palace and Brighton are all signed up with the Living Wage Foundation to pay the living wage, which I think is it £10.55 an hour?
Well, it's slightly different in London. It's the London living wage, isn't it, which is slightly higher, I think, than the rest of the nation.
So that gives us the position there.
Is that all? So that's only 6 clubs?
It's only 6 clubs.
That's not right. I'm genuinely surprised by that, to be perfectly honest.
Yes, I mean, I looked at the documentation this morning. I think Palace got formal agreement in November.
Yes.
I think the other clubs, all credit to them that they are doing. Even credit to West Ham. It's not something we've given a lot of. There's little excuse.
There's no excuse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. There is zero.
I very rarely contradict you, Kieran, but there is no excuse on this one.
There's no excuse. We have to be a little bit careful that some clubs could easily do it, and then what you might find is that they outsource things such as catering and security.
Yeah.
And are those companies committing to signing up for it as well?
Well, I'm glad you say that, because it stops me. Because I'm proud to say that Palace have insisted that all subcontractors pay the London living wage. So
That's
that means
excellent.
that catering staff and anybody else that employ staff at Sellers Park on a match day or non-match day have to sign up to that, which is only right, I think, as well. And I'm genuinely shocked that even for PR purposes, there are clubs that aren't doing this, because it's going to cost them nothing.
Yep.
Okay. Daniel Ellicott. Let's go back. Let's just pay due respect to Daniel's fine name, Daniel Ellicott. Now, Richard Scudamore, we mentioned this before, got a £5 million bonus when he was laid off as CEO of the Premier League. So Daniel's question is, do you believe that bonus was justified, and would it impact at all on the finances of teams in the Premier League who are on tighter budgets?
Was it justified? Yes, because the Premier League feared Richard Scudamore going to one of the broadcasters, and with his insider knowledge, effectively being able to negotiate a lower deal on behalf of the broadcasters. So that £5 million, which is spread over 3 years, I think we're effectively looking at $100,000 per club per year. The club chairman voted in favour of that £5 million. Effectively, it's a glorified form of gardening leave in that he would not go to work for somebody who would be involved in negotiations with the Premier League. So it's a form of an insurance policy on behalf of the clubs. They feel that by having him not on the opposite side of the negotiating table when they're trying to agree their next broadcasting deal, they will be in a stronger position and they'll be able to get a better price off the TV companies. Okay, interesting. Keith Jeffrey. Now, we skirted around this subject a while ago in one of the pods. When I mentioned that, looking at Everton's shirt, I couldn't tell you who was on the front of it, but Angry Birds always, I could tell you which sleeve it's on. Keith's question, hello Keith, this is a good one, I think. Has the Carabao sponsorship of the League Cup been a waste of money? Keith says he's never seen it in any supermarket. Thinking about it, I don't think I have either. I believe it's South Korea's second most popular energy drink. Is it possible, Keith asks as well, to determine the cost effectiveness of the sponsorship? Or is this one of those trophy things where back in South Korea it reflects very well on them that they sponsor the League Cup in English football, or is it actually working in terms of promoting their brand? I think, again, what you've implied, that back home this is done really well. If you take a look at some of the stunts that have taken place in respect of the Carabao Cup, in that the draw was taking place at Chinese time and Korean time and so on, in order to maximise audiences there, you can only assume that Carabao must be delighted. The UK is a relatively small market, and they will already be aware that there are other brands of energy drinks which have the market sewn up and have huge marketing budgets. So realistically, they weren't looking to penetrate the UK market. The prize money for winning the Carabao Cup is only around about 200 grand. If you compare that to the FA Cup, which is around about 4 million, and then you've got the Champions League where you could get 100 million, it is small beer, and that's why I think some people fear for its future. Okay. Well, that's a question for another pod, unfortunately. Last question comes from Gareth Richards. Hello, Gareth. I'm not sure, after me saying to you, can you keep the answer short for the rest of this pod? I'm not sure there is a short answer to this one, but it's an interesting question and a slightly worrying one. Gareth wants to know whether you think the proposed changes to the Champions League format, plus the proposed third competition, will this damage the football pyramid in our country beyond repair? In other words, is it going to guarantee a small, elite number of clubs that the rest of us will find impossible to financially compete with? I think at the very top level, it's difficult to see how a club such as Leicester, and I think Leicester have been a fantastic example. A, they won the Premier League. B, they're looking like getting a Champions League spot this year. It's difficult to see how anybody can break through the financial dominance that the big six clubs have. What we have seen is that the value of being in Europe is worth a minimum of 20 million up to 100 million in prize money. That gives you a huge start every season. You've also got sponsors willing to pay more to the clubs. We've spoken about a sponsorship coming from gambling companies before, but note who those gambling companies aren't sponsoring. They're not sponsoring Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea, because those clubs are operating in a different pool in terms of the money. It is a cause for concern, because if the larger clubs decide that they are going to continue to split up the money from the Premier League between themselves in a more advantageous manner, and we've just seen that with international rights, are they then going to turn around and find other ways of reducing what they are prepared to drip down into the EFL? And that does have impacts upon, if you are a Wigan fan, have you seen the last of the Premier League forever? The same with Barnsley. We've actually had 49 clubs play in the Premier League since it came into existence in 92-93. And I think that has always given clubs some hope. You've only got to look at, Huddersfield had their 2 seasons in the sun. It would be great if things were more egalitarian and democratic, but that's not the way things are moving. Damn. I'm determined that one day we'll end one of these pods on an upbeat note. Every pod ends with me sighing, like Eeyore.
being told bad news is terrible. Question of Football is a Daptic production. If you have any questions for us, it's questions@priceoffootball.com. I feel I should be saying .com then.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
I've been saying it so much. It's just all words now, isn't it? And of course, you can leave reviews for us, as long as they're good reviews, where you leave your reviews, because algorithms, I haven't said that for a couple of weeks. We'll see you on Thursday.
Cheerio, folks.
The price of football. The price of football.